Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Dickinson, Jr., Chairman of the Board of Directors of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition.
There you go. All right. I even got applause. Good evening. Listen, we're going to try to get started. We're really, really happy, and thank you for being here. So would everybody just calm down, take your seat, get ready to listen to a lot of great people speak, okay? But anyway, thank you. This has been a great conference. I want to thank, first of all of our sponsors for their support. You know, this wouldn't be possible without the sponsorship of many corporations. You've seen them in your book, so let's give them a round of applause, too. And also, very important, and people that we probably don't get enough credit are the staff members at the NCRC. So let's congratulate and thank the staff. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I am pleased to introduce our first speaker for the night. Gustavo Valezquez is the Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Prior to his nomination, Velasquez was Executive Director of the Latino Economic Development Center, a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C., dedicated to serving thousands of Latinos and other immigrants and underserved populations gain the necessary skills and capital to start and maintain their own businesses. LEDC also advocates for and supports communities to secure affordable and accessible housing. Prior to his tenure at LEDC, he served for 7 years as director of the District of Columbia Office of Human Rights, where he led enforcement provisions of the D.C. Human Rights Act, considered one of the most comprehensive non-discrimination laws in the country. He also served between 2003 and 2007 as D.C.'s Director of the Office of Latino Affairs. During his district government career, Velasquez ensured that the very comprehensive civil rights of our residents, visitors, and workers in our nation's capital were upheld according to the law. That deserves a round of applause, absolutely. Before his mayoral appointments, he was Director of Operations and Director of Division of Families and Neighborhood Development at Congreso de Latinos Unidos, the leading social service provider to Latinos in Philadelphia. He served on numerous boards and advisory groups at the national and local level, with an emphasis on civil rights, educational organizations, as well as for issues related to the advancement of Latinos in the United States. He attended the University of Pennsylvania, where he graduated with a master's degree in government administration. He and his wife, Emily, live here in the district with their 2 children. So we're pleased to have him. Would you please welcome Assistant Secretary Gustavo Valezquez.
Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. Thank you, Bob, for that kind introduction. I want to start this evening by commending NCRC for the high-caliber conference that you've had during the last few days. I had a chance to look at the program on my way here. You've had some very impressive speakers, but more importantly, I want to commend you for leaving the best for last. So just don't tell Secretary Castro I said that, please. Let me say how much I appreciate the work of NCRC, how much I admire the tenacity and the talent of your leader, John Taylor. John, great work always for many years. John came to visit, I don't know if Secretary Castro mentioned this, but John came to visit HUD when the Secretary had just been started in his role. And everyone, as always, was very impressed about John's passion for the work that NCRC and all of its members do across the country. All communities that are underserved, whether they need more financial capital to start business, whether they need more capital on the mortgage financing to accelerate the economic recovery, or communities that, for all sense and purposes of my office, the Office of Fair Housing, need to be more integrated and inclusive in the name of fair housing. And let me say, NCRC and HUD have not always agreed on everything, nor have we been in sync with some positions, but it's important to admit, us federal officials, national leaders, we have to admit when groups are on the right side of issues. And NCRC is one of those groups on the right side of issues. And as long as I am Assistant Secretary at HUD, I am committed to be appreciative, thankful, and supportive of all the work that NCRC and all of its members do across the country. I'm very honored to present tonight one of the awards, but I want to take a few minutes first to share some reflections on the state of fair housing in America today. Let's first acknowledge that for those who work, and I know you all work on defending, protecting our civil rights and civil liberties in our country, these last few years have been particularly challenging. Don't get me wrong, we've had some important victories in areas such as equal pay, marriage equality, the fundamental right to health care, but we've also had some setbacks on issues such as the right to vote, on issues such as affirmative action, on issues on chronic ailments that continue to persist, unfortunately, in some of our communities, such as police abuse and criminal injustice. Just a couple weekends ago, of course, we all know that we heard the inspiring stories of some of those who witnessed the tragic moments in Selma 50 years ago. President Obama was part of those commemorations, and we think that his speech in Selma is perhaps one of the best, if not the best speech that he's given during his presidency. He said there a quote that now it's famous and really has gone around the country many times: "The march is not finished, but we are getting closer." He said, if we want to honor the courage of those who march in Selma, then all of us are called upon to possess their moral imagination. Yeah. We have the unique opportunity as an army, and I know this room is full of an army of those whose actions are guided by a moral compass to reinvigorate the power of fair housing and the Fair Housing Act as we celebrate 47 years of the passage of this important, critical civil rights legislation. And in doing that, we make sure we settle once and for all the covenant that in America we live free to choose where we live without regard to who we are, how we look, how we speak, or who we love. As advocates for justice and equality, we have to stay strong and defend what those marchers in Selma aspire to achieve. We cannot allow the few to add, quite frankly, fair housing to the list of setbacks. And let me say, this year is critical. Folks, you probably have those discussions in this conference. This year is critical. We have several things on the balance. As you know, this year will be critically important for the legal doctrine of disparate impact. This year will be critically important on issues like affirmatively furthering fair housing. And let me just say a few words about affirmatively furthering fair housing. First of all, let me just say thank you to NCRC for making fair housing planning issues of affirmatively furthering fair housing always a priority in your conferences. You do that every year, and we're very appreciative of that. This initiative that HUD is undertaking, proposing to implement, what it does is really help us move towards a land of full inclusion in housing and freedom of choice. Our AFFH, Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing proposed rule, provides a planning framework that doesn't make it harder for communities, as our critics have said. It makes it easier for state, for cities, for funded entities to meet this legal obligation that has been in existence for now 47 years. This is nothing new. A planning framework that provides cities, towns, states with clear definitions of what it means to affirmatively further fair housing, provide them data, and encourage community participation. A planning framework, again, without any prescriptive outcomes, as some of the news have reported. Not top-down mentality, not gotcha mentality, but one that supports local communities so that on their own, they can effectively assess the opportunities that they have to proactively eliminate barriers to housing choice and set a plan forward to embrace and fully implement the national policy of inclusive housing. And we've been fortunate to have NCRC, many civil rights groups comment in favor of this proposed regulation. And obviously, affirmatively furthering fair housing has the potential to bring about transformational outcomes in our communities, but there's so many other areas that reflect the impact of the work that we conduct at HUD. Work, by the way, that we never conduct alone, but rather in partnership with hundreds of organizations out there, many of them here, grantees such as NCRC of our FIP, Fair Housing Initiatives Program. So I want to take the opportunity tonight to first and foremost say to all of you, thank you for that work that you do on the ground across communities in our country. Now, in the last year, we've been, with our partners, working diligently on the issues of fair housing enforcement. We have obtained more than $425 million in compensations for victims of housing discrimination. This has been a steady increase over the last few years. And let me just take just a couple minutes to talk about the aggressive work that we continue to do around lending discrimination. I think that this is a very important area for NCRC. We're going to be talking about one very, very important awardee tonight, and I just want to talk just about this conciliation agreement that we negotiated with Midland States Bancorp, and the group tonight was a key to resolving allegations because this bank avoided doing business in predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods in St. Louis, Missouri, and in northern Illinois. So this redlining case obviously resulted in a settlement, originated $8 million in mortgage loans in majority minority neighborhoods and open full service branches in Illinois and St. Louis. So this was an extraordinary case, one of the high profile cases, and this is important to highlight because tonight's awardee had a lot to do with it. Enforcing the Fair Housing Act in the area of mortgage lending or financing is extremely important, particularly when we are slowly coming back from the worst real estate crisis in decades. If you remember, you did a lot of work back a few years when we were having a conversation about widespread predatory lending in communities of colors. Minorities, were the target of vast predatory underwriting out there. Then 07, 08 came, the bubble burst, and after years of corrective action by the banking industry, now we have such restrictive environment with record levels of limited mortgage lending and home ownership across these communities of color. The Urban Institute reports that the housing market is missing out on 1.2 million loans every year. And as you know, Blacks and Hispanics, this has been reported multiple times, are at a 14-year low in their ability to secure a mortgage. And these are the same communities widely affected by the foreclosure crisis and communities that depend largely on home equity for their wealth, as a percentage of their wealth. So when we talk about fair housing and home lending and expanding access to credit, we're not just talking about protecting people from discrimination. We're talking about helping our economy recover from the crisis. We're talking about making the country stronger by giving everyone the opportunity to own a home and continue to create wealth. And this is why at HUD we're working to expand credit access to communities that would not otherwise obtain it. The secretary was here a couple of days ago. I'm sure he talked about what HUD is doing through the Federal Housing Administration to expand access to credit. And we continue to look forward to expand access to credit in a much more restrictive secondary market by working closer and closer and closer with Freddie and Fannie through our fair lending oversight. We have fair lending oversight, let's not forget about it, and we have to use it in working closely with the government-sponsored enterprises. We appreciate NCRC supporting this effort. We particularly applaud you for the actions you took against Urban Financial of America. You allege that Black and Hispanic prospective applicants for home equity loans received less information about government-required counseling and other services than whites, and because of your good work, HUD was able to settle the case and obtain almost $200,000 in relief. As I close, let me summarize a path forward. I want to leave you with some thoughts about 3 areas of our work that we continue to seek for your help, your assistance as you come back to your communities and help us in the area of fair housing. First, let me say area number 1, I come back briefly to affirmatively furthering fair housing and say I am confident that we are going to have a new national regulation in this area very, very soon. I am. AFFH is a complicated phrase. We're going to call it fair housing planning for now, and we're going to say that when it comes to fair housing planning, this is not just the work of the government. Fair housing planning is not just the work of government, local governments and state governments. We are going to need a lot of public engagement, public mobilization, public participation, especially those who don't have a voice or say typically in local community planning, and you know that that's true. We need people to be engaged so that no community is left out of the goals that states, cities, and towns across the country will have in their decisions for future investments and infrastructure. So that's area number 1. Area number 2, enforcement. We need all of our partners out there, like NCRC, local governments, private fair housing organizations, legal assistance groups, to continue to do the hard work of identifying, investigating, analyzing disparities in lending, bringing cases to HUD so that we don't rest until everyone who believes that they are victims of discrimination have his or her issues heard under the law. And lastly, education. We must continue to raise awareness of the obligations of housing providers and the rights that families and individuals are entitled to across many of these important civil rights protections that we have in the housing space. I appreciate the opportunity, folks, to be in such distinguished crowd in company of terrific speakers. We had Sarah is here present, Sarah Pratt, who you all know. We had her speak. And so many other people from HUD as well and from other agencies. Thank you again, as I said at the beginning, to be on the right side of history. Thank you for making fair housing part of your priorities. NCRC, at the national level, and all of its members. Let's remember that according to recent studies, the zip code where you grow up, where you stayed, and this, I'm just following the study here, dictates in many, many ways more the outcomes that you have, the chances that you have in life than your own DNA makeup. This is what I read recently, and I believe it. Housing is an anchor that opens doors to communities, to opportunity for a good education, the ability to stay safe, create your own business, and thrive for you and the generation that is behind you. but the opportunity will never come unless you are given the chance for a decent, quality, fair, and inclusive place you call home. This is a fundamental condition to prosper as a human being, and the fact that you are always protective and vigilant of fair housing is very, very important to me, to HUD, and to the rest of the federal government. Thank you very much, and God bless everyone.